May we learn together in hope and joy. Please be seated. I would like to start off today in an attempt to fool you into thinking that I am far more knowledgeable than I am by using two very uncommon and yet esoteric sounding words that you might think, wow, Tyler, he's really informed about things. The answer to that is, no, he's not. He Googled this stuff before the sermon. And so I can come to you and act like I know these things. But there's two words I'd like to share with you. And if I'm getting it wrong, don't correct me now. Just correct me later. That would be the kind thing to do. The first word is aptronym. Aptronym, A-P-T-R-O-N-Y-M. Aptronym. Aptronym is when somebody's name has an uncanny connection to who they are or what they do. So, do you remember a man by the name of Usain Bolt? Usain Bolt, right? Usain Bolt, fastest man in the world, record-breaking sprinter. Appropriate name for the fastest man in the world, Bolt, right? Aptronym. That's an acronym. The other word is charactonym. Charactonym, C-H-A-R-A-C-T-O-N-Y-M. I practiced this so I could spell it without looking at my notes. It's also the third time I've preached the sermon. So anyway, charactonym. I could just be making this stuff up. That's really true. Charactonym is similar, but it's when it's in a work of art. So a book, a novel, a play, etc., where the character's name tells you something about that character. Yeah? So do you remember there was a character by the name of Casper Milquetoast? Casper Milquetoast, right? You know what he's like, right? He's the mayonnaise equivalent of humans, right? He's milquetoast. There it is, right? If we want to be Shakespearean, Sir Toby Belch, you know what you're getting, right? And if we really want to show off, we can say Iago from Othello. Yes? Iago, ego, selfish, conniving for his own, right? These things happen. There is a story that I won't tell you about, but it includes a character called Reverend Snooze. If any of you refer to me as Reverend Snooze during coffee hour, I'm going to shake my finger at you and say that's not nice. So there are these connections between who you are and your name. And in the Bible, that happens all the time. In the Hebrew Bible, in the Christian Testament, the New Testament, we find that names say something about the person. And we have really two examples of that in our gospel reading. One of those is the name Jesus. The angel of the Lord comes to Joseph and says, name him Jesus because he will save the people from their sins. Jesus means Yahweh saves, or the Lord saves. But we also have, in both the Hebrew Bible and in the gospel reading, a title, which I really want to think about a little bit more than the name Jesus, and that is Emmanuel. Not so much a name, but a title, and it means God with us. God is with us. You'll notice it's spelled two different ways. We won't get into the transliteration of Hebrew versus the transliteration of Greek, but it's the same thing, Emmanuel. It means the same thing, God with us. And I want to think about that, because this idea of God with us is at the very heart of what Christmas is all about. It's at the very heart of what we are expecting during Advent. It is what we celebrate as Christians. It is our unique belief in our unique scriptures that God took on human flesh in this little child Jesus and tabernacled among us. The fancy theological doctrinal word is incarnation. Incarnation. Some of us like chili con carne, right? With meat. God in the meat, God in the flesh, God in the skin. Incarnation. And incarnation tells us something about God. And it tells us something about us. And it tells us something about this world around us. The first thing that it tells us about God is that God is willing to be vulnerable with us. You know this to be true. That when you are starting to build a relationship with someone, it really starts to be a deep connection when you start to share who you truly are in an open and transparent way, right? You can think of the big, important relationships in your life, and you might remember, this is when I shared something about myself, and it was a little scary. It was something personal. It was something potentially embarrassing. It was something that I put before this other person or these other people, and I knew that I was at risk. Because they might hear that and love me, and maybe even love me more because of what I've shared, and that would be wonderful. But I think all of us can think of a time where we did that and we weren't met with love. We were met with criticism. We were met with a joke. We were met with something that we didn't like, and it hurt. It hurt even more because we finally had made ourselves vulnerable and thus at risk. And they came back at me. God, in the incarnation, puts God's self before us and is vulnerable. Why? Because God wants to be as close to us as can be. To shift gears for a second from the sublime to the ridiculous, did any of you happen to watch on Netflix the Jake Paul boxing match 2 nights ago? Did anybody watch me? I was shocked when somebody at the earlier service raised their hand that I did watch. It was a boxing match between Jake Paul and this other guy, and I think in the 6th round, Jake Paul got knocked out, and I'm glad for that. It probably is wrong for a priest to stand in a church and say, I'm glad that a guy got his jaw broken, but I'm pretty sure God was rooting for that too. That's the closest to blasphemous jokes we're going to get this at. But if you watched it, you would have noticed how in the world did Jake Paul get to the 6th round in this match against a real boxer? He did it by running and hiding in the ring. He kept as far away as he could be. He stayed out of arm's reach because he knew if I got within arm's reach, it's going to hurt. And I'm going to go down. And so he stayed a distance. And we can see that in a boxing ring, and we can see that in our lives too. Yeah? There are people that we keep at an arm's distance. There are people that we try to stay a distance from because we know if we get close, we're probably going to get hurt. And we probably have learned that lesson over and over again, haven't we? Fool me once, fool me twice, burn me a 3rd time, a 4th and a 5th, and now maybe I'll learn to stay away. We aren't close to those people. We don't feel connected to those people. We love those people from a distance to the extent that we can. But God says, I don't love you from a distance. I love you right here, in this place. And that is a remarkable thing. It's a remarkable thing because our lives, this world of ours, often is a mess, isn't it? Have there been times where you've looked at your life and said, things are kind of a mess right now? Have you ever looked around your house and thought, oh, things are a little bit of a mess right now? I surely hope nobody that I care about shows up. Not that we really do that anymore. You get a text or something like that, I'm coming. But have you ever looked at your house and thought, boy, I hope my family or friends don't come over right now? Like, especially if you have children or you have pets, right? You're like, oh my goodness, the dog chewed on this thing. There's stuff out. It's a mess. I don't want anyone to come. It'll be uncomfortable. Sometimes we feel that way about our lives, I think. But God, in the incarnation, in this thing that we celebrate on Christmas, says, let it be a mess, and I'll come anyway. And I will love you so well that you won't even care that it's a mess there. The incarnation tells us so much about God, but it also tells us about this world. I remember reading from Rowan Williams, former Archbishop of Canterbury. He was talking about the incarnation, and he says, and I had this struggle myself, that for centuries the church has wrestled with how to understand the incarnation. How is it that Jesus could be God and a human being at the same time? Isn't it that you're either God or a human? And the answer that the church just could not accept, but that Jesus shows us, is no. You can be God and human at the same time. Divinity and humanity, divinity and the created order, are not in competition with each other, but find a home most perfectly with each other. And so we can look at this world around us. Maybe we're going for a walk. Maybe we're just sitting on a park bench. Maybe for some of us it's when the sun is warm on us. For others it's when the snow is falling gently. And we look at this world and we think in our hearts and maybe in our spirits, isn't that divine? The answer from the incarnation is yes. Yes, it is. And even more, I think, important is there are times where we can look at other people. And in fact, we ought to look at every other person and say, aren't you divine? And the answer that Jesus says is yes. Because that's not in competition. I can look at you as a human being with warts and problems and messes and struggles, and also see within you the spark and light of divinity. Friends, wouldn't this world be a better place? Wouldn't this community of Scranton of ours be a better place if the first thing that we noticed about other people when we looked at them is just how divine they are, and not all of the other things that we so often look at? It's the incarnation. It was true then, it is true now. God is with us wherever we go. There is no space that we can say, God is not here. In my life, and I imagine in yours, I've been to some really nasty places. Yeah? Surrounded by some really nasty characters, doing some really nasty things. And there are times when you are in places like that, for you, I suspect, because I know it's for me, that you might look at this place and say, this place is just a God-forsaken place. But if you ever say that, you are wrong. If I ever say that, I'm wrong. Because there is no place where God does not go with us. And there is no person that God is not already inhabiting, infleshing, saturating with the divine. And so we hear this title, Emmanuel, God with us. And we hear that Matthew says that this God with us is an answer to the prophecy. And so, the angel says, name him Jesus. And I would submit to you that the idea that God saves and that God is with us is saying the same theological truth with different words. What is salvation? If not, that at every moment of every day, God is with me. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.